Good morning and welcome to our video today from Yoker Evangelical Church on the 24th of February, Wednesday. In our Bible reading plan this morning, we read Job chapter 24 and 1 Corinthians 11. I want to look at Job 24 because it helps us to think about an unjust world. We do live in an unjust world. Injustice is all around us, in our city, in our nation, and in our world. Every week we seem to hear more stories where powerful people exploit others and so often get away with it. Those at the top seem to have no problems with exploiting those beneath them, and there's some people at the bottom who just never seem to get a break. And yet, as we read Job's story written thousands of years ago, we find that he faced exactly the same problem. In chapter 24, he looks out at his world, and as he's responding to his friends, he sees a great deal of suffering. He sees people taking from the weak, from widows and orphans, and he sees weak people who need help being left to suffer, naked, alone. And verse 1 captures how many people would have felt. Why does the Almighty not set times for judgment? Why must those who know him look in vain for such days? He writes. This is the cry of a person who sees injustice in the world and who sees nothing being done about it. And so often this is the case. It is rife in our world, and in many ways COVID has exposed it. In the months where COVID has been going, the richest people in the world in many cases have gotten even richer. And there seem to be people at the bottom who were suffering before, whose suffering has just multiplied throughout this pandemic. It is inescapable. We live in a world that seems demonstrably unfair, where people never seem to face justice for what they have done, and where some people seem to be left to suffer without any hope of help. So where are we to look then? If we feel like Job in verse 1, why does God not set judgment for this? Well, we need to read the rest of the chapter, as Job himself answers his own appeal. You see, Job has experienced his share of injustice. He didn't deserve to lose all his flocks, all his houses. He didn't deserve for his children to die. He didn't deserve for his body to be struck with skin disease. And yet, as he looks out and sees an unjust world, he is still able to remind himself that God is in control. As he looks out at all the injustice in the world, eventually he arrives at verse 18, where he starts to turn it around and sees that God is still at work. So he's talking about powerful people who exploit others, yet they are foam on the surface of the water. Now that is a picture of something that is here today and gone tomorrow. Foam on the surface of the water is something that appears and goes. It's a nothing. It's not really there. It's like mist. Verse 24 maybe makes it a wee bit more clear. For a little while they are exalted, and then they are gone. They are brought low and gathered up like all others. They are cut off like ears of corn. And here Job hits it right on the head. When we see injustice in the world, it looks like powerful people who exploit others seem to get away with it without end. But that is not the case. God has promised in his word, and Job knew that the day would come where God's perfect justice is carried out. He will not tolerate injustice forever. The day is coming when he will judge and everything will be set right. Maybe this morning watching this, you feel a bit like Job. You look out at a world that seems full of injustice, a world that doesn't seem to have any answers to that. And yet, we can trust in God's perfect justice and trust for ourselves in the judge. As Job speaks of the meek being lifted up, we cannot help but think of a man who would come centuries later and speak about the meek being blessed. Job's appeal for justice rings true with the Lord Jesus. And yet as Jesus speaks about it, he can do more than Job, as he points to himself and says, I am the key. Jesus promises in himself justice and mercy come together. He is the one that we are to look to when our world seems bleak. We look to him to see perfect justice carried out. I hope you have a great day today, and a day where you look to God in all things. God bless.